I don't think layoffs in and of themselves are bad, but the how of how you do that is important. And if you've not invested in your people so they could, find another job, if you didn't do a compensation package as they left, then you've not taken care of those people. And I can't trust my future to you.
Welcome to the People Managing People podcast. We're on a mission to build a better world of work and to help you build happy, healthy, and productive workplaces. My name is David Rice. I am your host as always. My guest today is Kamaria Scott. She is the founder and CEO of Enetic and the creator of the Manager Momentum Operating System. We're going to be talking about engagement, the psychological contract, and a whole lot more. This is the first installment of a two-part conversation. Part two is going to be over on Kamaria's show called the Manager to Manager podcast. So be sure to be on the lookout for that. I'll announce that later, but I will make sure we come back to that so you don't forget, listener. But let's just get right into it. Welcome. It's good to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you. And I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Listeners, for context, we met recently at a conference called Running Remote and hit it off. And yeah, we want to talk about management and some key issues going on right now. And this is where I'm just going to launch us right into it here.
Yeah. Well, before you do that, I want to add to your context because we did meet at Running Remote, but I think what was so cool is that we both focused on what it's like to lead people and how work is changing, right? Like, I think our immediate connection was that Running Remote was kind of a unique conference because it was focused on kind of the anti of what we're seeing in the workplace right now, which is people just being drugged back to their offices. It is this
Kicking and
wonderful,
screaming.
conference about no, let's stay free and get this
Yeah.
work done.
And I was like, I'm here for this. So.
These are my people.
Right. Yeah. I was like, wow, these are the voices I needed to find.
Yeah.
But like, there's a lot of different topics that came up at the conference, right? And like one of them was engagement. And everybody's worried about engagement, seeing engagement and productivity dips, from where, we were a couple of years ago where I think right after the pandemic, like productivity was really high, right? And now there's this fear that people are disengaging. And I kind of want to start simple, but like not really simple at all, right? With just a simple question. What is engagement in your view?
Oh, I
Like,
love
how
it.
has that definition drifted over time?
Yes. So, okay. So, for people who don't know me, I am an psychologist, and so I am also a bit of a nerd. And so, when we think about the concept of employee engagement, it actually started off from a study done by David Kahn, and he actually talked about workplace satisfaction. And so, it's really just the affinity that people have for the work and the workplace. So, when people always say, like, what is engagement? I say it's the energy that you put towards something, but I also like there have been several different definitions of engagement over time. Blessing White used to call it the intersection of where the employees' needs are met and where the organization's needs are met. So it's kind of like that center place where there's happy, high engaged, high productive people, but there's also a happy, high engaging workforce and they're getting what they need done. There used to be another organization, I think it was I can't remember the name, but they had like a three-layer model and they'd be like engaged in what? Engaged in the work, engaged in the environment, engaged in the team. And I really loved that because it talked about the affinity to those three things. But the long and short of it is engagement is just the measurement of your affinity for your workplace and the work that you do.
When as I came into HR, like I think that we were evolving towards that three-pronged, like how engaged are you with the sense of purpose, the team that you're on, the company itself and their mission. And it's like that is the most complicated and difficult to manage version of this idea.
That's so, I loved that. But I loved that version so much. I loved it because I think that you can be engaged in one and not the other, right? So I'm somebody who's always engaged in my work, and sometimes I don't really care what the organization is doing. As long as I have engaging work to do, I'm a happy camper. The thing that happens at the team level, that's the engagement that we sort of really talk about. But that's, your day to day experience. Are you engaged with your team? And then it's like, are you engaged with a broader organization? And I find that most people are like, meh, when it comes to that. But, so I think it's interesting because it gives you some direction as to what you should be looking at if you're trying to fix something.
Oh, I couldn't agree with that more. Like I can think of times where like I was had tasked with, say, like leading a task force, and you're all super engaged and invested in that project, in that task, this like initiative that you think will move the needle. But at the time, like you could look around at the rest of the business, and a lot of us were like, it's
Right.
all broken. I don't know.
We're like, I don't know about that, whatever that is. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
like
over
I don't
here,
even want
over
to deal with
here, it's good.
that. So when we were talking before this, we were talking a little bit about the psychological contract and how it's changed a little bit over the time.
Yeah. See, this is why I like that we started off with kind of like the three prong, because when I think about like engagement at the organization level, I think psychological contract, because a lot of that engagement, a lot of what happens there is for me the epitome of a psychological contract, right? And that is really, for those who aren't familiar, that's the relationship, that the unspoken agreement that employees and employers have had with each other since we started having employees and employers, right? And I think it used to be that if I take care of you, if you as the employee take care of the company in your younger years, that the employer is going to take care of you in your later years. And so there was this kind of shared agreement that like we're sort of in this together, right? Maybe there's a give and take, but I'm going to take care of you, you're going to take care of me. We may both have to sacrifice a little bit, but we're going to get there together.
I think it's interesting because like we found a lot of ways to sort of break that contract. We've seen, now we're seeing like the rise of a lot more gig workers, contract people, right? And I think about like the long-term consequences of that. There's almost like this enthusiasm for it right now, which I kind of don't understand. Like I do understand it, but from the organizational perspective, I almost don't understand it because like while it may have advantages on saving you money in certain ways, they tend to cost more upfront. And that trust never really gets built. It's just very transactional, which is fine from the employee perspective. It's like,
Yes.
whatever, 'cause it's like now I don't have to worry about your BS.
So I think, and this is probably going to be for me the running theme, because it always is my running theme. It's intentionality, right? Being really clear about what it is you want to get out of this relationship, because you're absolutely right. I think of a lot of organizations and why they started talking about employee engagement. And we started talking about employee engagement, right? And the original version of employee engagement had nothing to do with employee loyalty, right? It had nothing to do with productivity. It was really measured with like kids at a summer camp and how much they enjoy their job. It was not what we turned it into. And then we sort of, because, let's sell things, manifested it into, well, it's loyalty to the organization. And organizations love loyalty because, if we're being honest, it leads to wage stagnation for employees. I don't want to pay market rate for you. So if I can bring you in and you can stay and I can give you 3% every year, I don't have to pay market rate for a new person. In that instance, I love it. But, and this is the important part of that, that also is a conversation or the context before we had technology. And so I think the important part of the conversation that people have to understand is that in the relationship between employers and employees, and there's only been two parties, right? Like it's like any game, two teams are taking the field, right? But then now we're in a space of there's a third party on the field. And so if I can think about how I don't have to pay the cost, or I can employ fewer people and I can do so at a shorter term cost, then not only am I not paying, I might be paying market wage in terms of like the cost, but I'm not paying benefits. I'm not paying working compensation. I'm not contributing to your 401k. Because remember, the relationship used to be I take care of you now, you take care of me later. Well, I actually don't have to take care of you later because there's no 401k to vest. There is no pension anymore. It's just the cost of whatever I'm paying you right now. And that might be short term. So I think that is the transactional part of the gig work. And time will tell if that's really what you want, because that other part of engagement we talked about, right? Engagement in the work is something that you have to make sure you're baking in with contractors. If I'm just doing a thing and I have no connection to it or you, then are you going to get my best work? Maybe, but you don't know that.
Well, there's another piece to this, right? For a long time, contractors was enticing from the individual contributor perspective in the sense that in a lot of cases, you got paid more, really, because you could charge based on, your services or whatever. You could essentially kind of inflate the fee, right? And now with you mentioned the technology piece, and some of this stuff is getting automated or being valued slightly differently by companies. And so now that may end up getting diminished. Your ability to charge a certain fee may be getting diminished. And then if that happens, and you're not really invested in how well the company does, I think that it may be less enticing for both sides to have that. You know what I mean? That the evolution of that compensation structure is going to be interesting, like for contractors and even, well, even for employees, but that's a whole nother.
So I think the question of all this is like, where are we going? And one of the reasons I think why like, I always focus on intentionality is because I hate ending up where I didn't want to be. Right? Like I hate being like, how did we get here? This sucks. And I think I was reading an article yesterday about a company in China that has created a hotel cleaning robot.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so it is meant for commercial use. And I live in Central Florida, so for I live in one of the hospitality capitals of the world. And my immediate thought was, my God, what's going to happen when organizations decide to buy these cleaning robots instead of humans? And so even part of the conversation that we're having now, like we're thinking about AI, but we're thinking about it because it lives in the computer. We're not thinking about it out in the real world. So it's not just contract and gig workers, it's self-driving cars, it's robots that clean hotels. I think the bigger struggle is there a stopping point to automating or digitizing or robotizing our jobs? Or will we continue to do it until there's nothing left? And is that really the embodiment of the psychological contract, which is we no longer care about each other, we don't care about human beings and their need to work.
Yeah. So here's one of the things that, as we were talking beforehand, this kind of came up. We were talking about, some of these crises, and everybody's coming to me and they're talking about trust, right? Like right, when we hold our events, there's questions about trust. We just did one about reductions in force.
Hmm.
Of course, there's questions about trust, right? And it's one of the things that like it's going to get asked. And there's been some events in the last like 2 decades that have really impacted trust. And one of them was, I think, the Great Recession. And I'm curious, in your opinion, how did that sort of impact trust expectations in the workplace? Was it sort of a turning point in the engagement story?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And this has always been really, I'll say a challenge for me, right? Because as an IO psychologist, I literally went into IO psychology because employee engagement is my jam. Like it has been what I do since I started working. And so when you start talking about engagement, again, the outcome of that is loyalty to the organization. There is some roots of the psychological contract that we trust each other for these outcomes that we have to have. And I think when we hit the Great Recession, there was this sort of awakening that we weren't in the same relationship and that all of the narratives that we had spawned to people were not true, right? And I'll say this, like I always tell people I'm a layoff queen. I've been through 3 layoffs. And my first one was during the Great Recession. And I was just beside myself because it was the first time that I, as a human being, realized that my performance didn't actually matter. Right. So we tell people, if you're a high performer, high achiever, there's great things for you at the organization, blah, 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 blah. But then when it comes layoff time, performance is not in that conversation. It's a financial, we're cutting people, we're cutting things. You could have literally walked on water last year and you're still out the door, right? And so that relationship between what I think I have control over and what I actually have control over, it's not true, it's not real. And so then you start to break the trust that you're going to take care of me. So you told me to take care of you. I did that. I showed up. I was a 5 last year. And then you didn't really take care of me. And what's so interesting about the Great Recession is I will say, as layoffs have progressed, we've gotten better at laying people off. Back then, like you could be laid off with a month's severance, if that. I lived in a space where people showed up to work one day and the doors were just locked,
Hmm.
right? All of those are flagrant violations of the psychological contract because even if like taking care of you doesn't mean take care of you now. It means even taking care of you as I offboard you. I don't think layoffs in and of themselves are bad. I do think that companies shift. And I think that there are times when you have to say we have a different strategy, we're going to go a different direction. But the how of how you do that is important. And if you've not invested in your people so they could, find another job, if you didn't do a compensation package as they left that said, hey, listen, we're going to give you 3 months of severance so you can find another job, then you've not taken care of those people. And I can't trust my future to you. I coined this term that I called unreciprocated altruism. And what that means is that, like, as the employee, you expect for me to sacrifice for you organization, but I don't see that same sacrifice in return.
Mm.
And individual employees are asked to kind of put the company's needs before their needs and trust that the employer is going to like make good on that sacrifice at some point. And the Great Recession kind of signals to people that that's not the case.
No, absolutely. There were some crazy things that happened back then. I mean, I can remember one. One of my former colleagues found out that he had been let go when he went to badge in and the badge didn't work anymore.
Yes.
And I was like, you could have just let him stay home. Like
You
you
could
could
have
have just
let him
called
know.
him
Yes,
so that he
people.
didn't
I
drive
know
in.
people showing up to the front door and the front door was locked.
Yeah.
And these are real human individuals with real jobs, real lives, real children responsibilities that literally their paycheck stopped that day and they didn't know it. Right. And so I think that kind of behavior has become more common, the sort of treating employees as if they're not human, right? If they're not real people, as if, and there's something in the language that we use, right? So when we started, I remember when we first started calling employees resources, I was working for a tech company. And they're like, yeah, these resources. And I was like, are we talking about people? Like, what are we doing? These are humans, they're not resources. But when you start to use that decentralized neutral language, what ends up happening is that you start treating people as if they're not human people. Then it makes it easier when you are making these decisions. And again, I know organizations have to survive, but we have to remember that organizations are made up of humans.
Well, and I think on a philosophical level, we need to realize that their value, like the organization exists because we as a species have the ability to work together. There's no thing in the animal kingdom where they have like a sort of a business.
And
Right?
yeah,
Like
and
yeah.
directors.
Yeah. Like this doesn't really happen
There's
like
no
that.
VP of sales in the Lion King.
The only reason is we are capable of this as a species and we've constructed our society around it, but it only has value if it has value to people. Outside of that, it's just an imagined thing. Like it's not a real entity. You can tear it down and no one dies. Like,
I want to go back to the thing that you said about trust too, because it's funny. I'm writing a chapter on trust for an ATD leadership book. And one of the things that I was thinking about as I was trying to formulate my chapter, because, you start doing the whole tried and true nonsense about, trust is in consistency and it's in, you know, are you competent as a leader, blah, 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 blah. But the thing that really struck me as I was writing it was trust is trust in the outcome. Like, there are certain people, like, I trust you to be a terrible person because you've shown me over and over again consistently that's who you are.
yeah.
So it's not like trust is this like this sort of good neutral thing. And so the trust has to be, do I trust that you're going to do the right thing by me? And that has become for me the overarching conversation. And not just with technology and AI, but when you're dragging people back to the office. Are you doing that for me or are you doing that for you? Trust that you're going to do the right thing for me means even if you have to lay me off, I trust that my separation will be something that's respectful and honors the commitment that I've had to this organization. My first layoff, I was like, oh, 30 days. Okay. That's a lot. But then, like my second layoff, they were like, so turns out you're going to have 6 months of, separation pay and we're going to give you, like, you can still have your insurance. I was like, the woman was
Bye.
like, I two-stepped out of there. She was like, I've never seen someone so like, I was like, girl, listen, you have done right by me. I
Yeah.
understand. Like, people come, people go. What I'm not worried about right now is whether or not my child and I will be living under a bridge. So all is good in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
So trust to me is directional, meaning like, can I trust that you are going to do what's right for me and for you? Like, can I trust that you're going to create a win-win situation? Or should I be trusting that you're only going to do what's right for you at my expense? And that's but we don't ever talk about that when we talk about trust and leadership. We make it seem like it's a neutral thing, but it's not.
Well, the other thing that we don't talk about, and I think that people are more inclined to want to trust if they feel like there's something worth engaging with in the organization. And this is kind of one of the things like, because we talk about engagement as this like metric, right? It's a
Mhm.
feeling, it's a goal, it's a competitive advantage, it's a product. We've got a million different labels on it. It's everything to somebody. But are we actually offering people something that they want to be engaged with a lot of the time? And now what we're seeing with the tech coming in is like, in
No.
some cases, no.
It's always been no. I think tech is amplified. It's no, seriously. And again, I feel like this is why, in a way, I love the work that I do because I use myself as a barometer. I know I'm a population of one, but I start with myself and then I extrapolate out to say, like, is what I'm experiencing an anomaly to me or is what everybody else experiences as well? Right. And so when I think about engagement, I always describe engagement as energy. They're nothing but floating balls of energy contained in bones and flesh, right? But it's energy. And it's a finite amount. I have 100% of my energy because we think about like the principles of energy, right? You don't create it or diminish it. It's just there and it just transforms. And so the energy is like, where do I engagement to me is where do I choose to put that energy? When I am super happy at work, you're getting more of my ball of energy. When you agitate my spirit, you get less of that ball of energy. And I take it and I put it some other place. I put it on a personal project. I put it into looking for a new job. I put it into everything else but your thing.
Mhm.
And so the question is like, do you want my energy? And are you making it worthwhile for me to point my energy at you, knowing that if I point it at you, there's an opportunity cost of something else that I'm not pointing it at?
100%. Having been in jobs where I had to really question, like, what is it that I'm doing? You know?
Yes.
And like we talk all the time about how this younger generation, they want that sense of purpose, that they're, more socially conscious. And I think that's all true. But I also think that like how the work gets done even is just, we did that survey a while back about like the show Severance, and just people's willingness to be the sort of like fervor with which they answered the question, would you sever your consciousness so that you don't remember work? I mean, even in the comments on some of the things, like I put a video up on TikTok and one person was like, I'd do it for an extra 50 grand. I don't care. I don't want to remember any of it.
Yes, because and I so relate to that, and here's why I relate to that, right? Again, I tell people I actually love my work. I have loved my work for most of my career, and I think I might be an anomaly in that. But we always tell people, so one of the tenets of employee engagement, right, is meaningful work.
Hmm.
And if you go back to kind of what that really meant, it was like they saw value in what they were doing and they liked the impact they were having on the kids. And so what we turned that into corporate speak, right, was like tell people how what they do contributes to organizational success. With love, nobody cares. Meaningful means meaningful to me. What do I find meaningful? And so when I think about, my career, what has always been meaningful to me has been my ability to help people reach their full potential, to create workplaces where people not only had the right skill sets to do their jobs, they had the right environments to do their jobs in. It's always been my purpose. And so any organization that's like, hey, friend, you want to do these two things here? I'm a happy camper. If you let me do those two things, I'm even happier camper. And so somehow we have taken people's personal engagement and what they find interesting and what they find meaningful, what they find value in. And we've turned that into, yeah, but what does that mean for the organization? Instead of going back to again why I loved Blessing White's model of engagement is that they acknowledged that it was an intersection. Like, let me let you do the thing that you love here. Let me find the alignment between what you love to
Yeah.
do and what we need to get done. And I think we've stopped doing that work to say this should always be a win-win situation. We should always be like, Kamaria lights up when we let her create, when we give her space to be awesome, when she has a project, give that girl a project and let her go. Right? We've stopped doing that. And what we did instead was we took work that used to be meaningful and used to be rich and we started making it task work. Right. So if you're thinking about like work design, I'm an end to end girly. I want the whole project. But what we did with work design as we took work that was interesting and engaging and end to end, and we started being like, you're going to do this piece of the work, and then you're going to do that piece of the work. No one gets to see the end to end of what they're doing. How can they find it meaningful?
Yeah.
Right? If I just said, well, you're just going to do this one part of the podcast, you're just going to do the opening. Then someone else is going to come in, they're going to do the middle part of the podcast, and someone else is going to close it out. What part are you taking in the one piece that you're doing? Because you don't even see the big picture. But I'm supposed to tell you that what you're meaning is important when all you want to do is create a really great podcast because you have a great vision for it.
Well, and then like the other thing that happens is you've got managers or like leaders who are like, well, they can't see the big picture. I think, well, you won't let them.
You
It's
won't
like
let them.
analogy I gave somebody was like, imagine you were building a house and you were making it out of brick, right? But the only thing that you were allowed to do is mix the mortar. Well, you wouldn't even know how to mix the mortar better if you didn't get to actually put it on any bricks.
There you go.
You
You
know
wouldn't
what I
know
mean?
if the mortar was good, why it sticks, what it needs to stick to, why
Yeah.
it's too
Does it need to be
watery.
thicker? Like, you don't know because you're just like just mixing this stuff and doing this thing, this very repetitive, drony thing, and no one trusts you to do anything else. Well, you're not going to learn anything
And
else. You're
what is
not
the
going to,
satisfaction in that, right? What
yeah,
is the
exactly.
satisfaction in that? I have always been somebody who, like, and one of the joys of being an eye psychologist is that we have a very broad skill set. So I do all the things. I do selection, training, assessments, coaching, and I find joy in doing all the things. The roles that I have loved before, if anybody knows me, they know I always talk about one job that I loved to pieces. It was my one dream job because they let me do all the things. They let me launch their first org wide engagement survey. I got to play in data. I got to go out and figure out the correlation between the employee engagement surveys and the guest satisfaction surveys. What metrics? Love them. I got to build a program to help our people leaders figure out how to drive engagement and how to use that engagement to bring our customer experience to life. There was so many things I got to do. There was new and novel experiences, and it was the most amazing thing. And then over the years, we started being like, no, you just do, I worked in another organization in a learning function. And it went from like, well, you're just a facilitator, or you're just a designer, or you're just a developer, or you're just a performance consultant, instead of being able to own an end to end project. And so if you can't own it end to end, then how do you see the big picture? How do you really understand the impact other than someone being like, David, your job is so important to us and to the organization and what we do here. We've lost the message somewhere. We've lost the plot line in this.
So before we go, I want to ask you something. Then this is like, so you're going to rewrite the psychological contract for today's workforce. This is a group of people that's seen a lot of layoffs, that's seen the freezes, the reorgs. So what would it say?
Let me clarify. Am I writing what it is today or am I writing what I think it should be?
What you think it should be?
I think the psychological contract should be what I think what I would always say. The psychological contract should be we are creating win win scenarios for the both of us. We are finding out what it takes for you as an individual to thrive in your personal and professional life. And we are aligning that to what we need to thrive as an organization. And we are together for as long as it makes sense. So, no more of this longevity nonsense. We all agree that's not a thing anymore. But we are going to be in agreement and on the same playing field about how we treat each other. And so we're going to have a shared expectation, meaning I am not going to expect you to treat me like a spouse while I treat you like a not spouse.
You could say side chick. It's
That's
fine.
what I said earlier. Well, I treat you like a side chick. Like that's not what we're gonna do here. So either we're both gonna be side chicks to each other or we're gonna be spouses to each other, but we're gonna be above board about what it is.
Love it. Well, before we go, two things I always do with every guest. The first is I want to give you a chance to plug anything you want to plug, tell people where they can find you and learn more about what you're doing.
So you can find me first and foremost. You can always find me where you find all the work peoples on LinkedIn. Kamaria Scott. Please do connect with me there. I love people. I love chatting about the future of work, engagement. And I particularly love talking about managers because I think they are the glue to all of this. And so you can find me at managermomentum.com. We'll talk about how I support people leaders. And you will find us very, very soon. Be on the lookout if you're following me for the very first Manager to Manager Summit, where we're going to talk about how we support people leaders in leading engaged, healthy, and high performing teams, and how we do that as a team sport with HR and senior leaders. So I look forward to seeing you all there soon. More to come on that.
Love it. Love it. Final thing, we do it on every episode. You can ask me any question you want. Could
Oh,
be related to our what we've talked about today, or it could be, I had one person ask me if I think aliens are real. Totally fine. So you pick.
ah, I would ask you. I'm curious, like, do you think the robots are coming? What do you think the end of the road looks like? Put on your dystopian future hat. Tell me where are we going?
I do. But I also think this, though. I just think that it's the catalyst to the next era of what it means to be human. And I don't necessarily think that that ends up being bad. It will be bad in the beginning. I think that because I don't trust the people who are managing the development of this technology, how it will be rolled out. They just today, they're trying to pass this. So we're recording this in early June, listeners. And they're just trying to pass the one big, beautiful bill through Congress. And inside that thing is a thing that says that no state or government body can make any AI regulation for 10 years, which is awful. And I think will be very damaging because businesses who are creating this stuff will use it to do all kinds of things. I mean, if you look at the amount of money being dumped into something like Palantir, but this is all something that's sort of like out of our control, right? The one thing I would say is that people will come together. There will be a moment where they sort of crack in a way, but force some kind of change. And I think that we may end up in a place where, like, yeah, the robots are here. They do a lot, but we just have a different thing that we do now. We all think about it differently, and we don't place as much meaning about work on your identity. And maybe your social capital is measured differently in everything that you do. And so, like, society isn't so constructed around work. It may not even be as constructed around money, like you said. And so I think that, yeah, like we are in for the next 10 years. I think we're going to see a radical change of some kind. I don't know what it is. This is just my theory. But I do think we'll see a radical change in which society is, yeah, goes through a major shift. Some of it will be painful, some of it will be good in the end. So just like anything else, like there'll be good and there'll be bad.
Love it.
Well, folks, be sure to join us for part 2 of this conversation over on Kamaria's podcast. It's the Manager to Manager podcast. We're going to be continuing that and continuing this discussion. It's going to evolve a little bit, but I hope you join us there. If you haven't done so already, sign up for the People Managing People newsletter at peoplemanagingpeople.com/subscribe. And until next time, don't freak out about the robots. You know, we could just unplug them. This is our choosing. So